So here's a presentation of my justification for a senior biology work program. So to construct that work program, I used the Dick and Carey model, which consists of 9 stages, which are presented in a website by Richard Kilata on instructional system design. But for the sake of this presentation, I summarized the model into 5-step processes. And I slightly modified it. For instance, I wanted to start with a motivation for my approach as a teacher and for my student. And here I found it in this proverb. And what's interesting is that the word involve is associated with learning. So in other terms, students need to be connected with the content to learn. And another important aspect of this proverb is that it's student-centered. So let's move on to now the analysis part. So the analysis, first of all, of the syllabus. So I went on the QCAA website to study the biology senior syllabus, but I used this document of work program requirement still from the QCAA website to just summarize what's important in terms of I have to look at the key concept, the key ideas, the general objectives, the type of assessment and the time allocation and such a things. So then I looked at my audience and I used a situational analysis and I used the Taba-Hilda model to diagnose it. And I use questions such as, who are my learners, what are they need, and this is what I highlight in this table, but also what are my resources and my strengths, where are my limitations, and what opportunity do I have for the student to relate the content to what they're familiar with. So the main idea here is that the student are put at the forefront of the development of my work program. And Murray points out that such approach is more effective in getting the learner to be an active actor and not be a passive actor. And they become the intention of the work program. So this fits into my objectives, and I use the Biggs P3 model for that, based on work by Biggs, Epthrift, and Reeves. In the first column on the left-hand side, the blue one, I summarized my analysis. I'm not going to dwell on it, but that fed onto my teaching and learning approach. And here we've got words such as authentic, real world, engaging, like a scientist, motivation. So this points towards a context-based approach. And Taconis and his collaborators in their book report that such environment, the benefit of it is that it's student-centered, and the student are given the opportunity to be active and self-steering, but also it uses realistic context and give a significant and a meaning to the science content. And these approaches fed onto the type of outcome I wanted for my student as individual, as scientist. So I wanted to them to develop competencies, but also in relation to the syllabus and the key concept. For instance, I want them to understand the principles of gene expression and evolution. So from there, I move on to a phase of development and try to mind map all the information that I've got and link the key concept to some context or project that student can work on, and also link with my student and the concept that they're familiar with my learning objectives, and look at also do I tick the scientific competencies, but do I have also the resources to do such a program? And in terms of health and safety assessment as well, that's important to make sure that I guarantee a safe and supportive environment for my student. So that fed on to my contextualization phase. And I put into context 6 units out of 8, 4 in year 11 and 2 in year 12. For some of the unit, I couldn't really bring a context, but instead I looked at a project-based approach, and I based my work onto Candler and Grove ideas that such approach promote scientific and collaborative skills, encourage students to actively discuss and attempt to solve issues that is related to the content. So this is really what I tried to bring in my first unit on cell biology, and I based that unit on De Berman study. He designed a work or a series of projects that link laboratory work with content. And really the student reported to increase their scientific literacy, their research associated skills. So that's linked with my competencies, scientific competencies I want my student to develop. Similarly, in my unit 4 on World of Insect, this is not so much about context, but more about a project. And here I wanted to focus on getting the student to develop their investigative skills and sense of inquiry, which should be in the toolbox of every scientist. And really, the justification for such approach was that the student chose a scientific subject, so they need to develop those scientific skills and way of thinking. In my second and third unit, I bring that into the context of the human physiology, which is a strong interest of the student, and relate that to sport and health, which is a national priority, and draw a lot of work around the Gold Coast, for instance. And it's all about understanding how our body functions and how to make decisions in relations to such understanding. And in my third unit on the anti-vaccine campaign, here what I wanted is just bring a controversial topic and get the student to analyze information, compare information. Is it a reliable information? Developing that sense of sourcing, gathering information, and what's a primary information, what's a good information, and what's misinformation as well. In the Farm in Crisis, which is my 5th unit, this is probably the most foreign to the student. And here is actually a very good opportunity for the student to go on excursion and go and talk to experts. We've got University of Queensland not so far, and they've got a farm at Gatton. So here I could just get them to experience farming and a rural life, because this is something that is foreign to them. They live in a suburban area. And talk to experts that use scientific knowledge and skills to relate to their and they integrate that to their work. And And finally, in the ecological unit, which is unit 6, this is where I implemented the 10 hours of fieldwork that are required by the syllabus. And here the student get to develop their range of sampling techniques. So it's very much hands-on, which Carlson and Sullivan interpret that as an integrated learning phase. Just to take that, just relate each of the unit to key concept and key ideas, and I make sure that I was also related to general objectives, that all the general objectives need to be ticked off for an entire year. So now let's move on to assessment. So here in Queensland, it's criterion reference, and it's got the advantage, and this is emphasized highlighted in Fensham and Bellocci, to get the student to access higher order thinking, because they get to evaluate their work. So when I design or choose the type of assessment, I try to match it with each of the unit to have the best fit. So in year 11, they undergo 2 ERT, 1 written task, and 1 EEI. And in year 12, I decided to start with the EEI for the farming, because it's developing their investigative skills in this topic, same as the world of insect, and the ERT for the ecological, and I had to mirror, so I added another ERT and a written task for the year 12. So I made sure that all the general objectives were ticked for the year, that in terms of understanding biology, investigating biology, and evaluate biology issues. In terms of evaluation, so I looked at the checklist of the QCAA for the biology syllabus, and I ticked all the boxes. There were a few that were not part of the assignment, but also evaluate. The evaluation wasn't done at just one point of time at the end, but it was constantly done in terms of, do I relate to my motivation, to my objective, to my analysis, to my audience? And I looked at a review by Harrington and Harrington on authentic learning environment, and I wanted to make sure I was actually going with the characteristic of this approach in terms of it use real life context to like the concept I put into real life context. But also I expose students to experts to give them a model of how a real practitioner uses this knowledge. Authors such as Bennett and collaborators and Donna King agree that there is a considerable benefit to such approach of contextualization and authentic learning in terms of student motivation in studying science and for their academic performance. And finally, Meyers and Nutty view also the benefits of such approach into get the student to adopt higher order thinking skills in order to meet the requirement of the syllabus. And here is the work that I cited for this justification, and I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good day. Bye.